that covered win, place, and show. So if you bet it to come in third, you still got paid, but the show amount. So in other words, if it paid, let's just say, make it easy because I can't count, $10 to win, $5 to place, $2 to show. Let's
There was
say.
no exotic wagering then, exactas, trifectas,
Right.
superfectas. There was nothing like that. Daily double, that's it.
Yeah.
That was
So
the
now,
only exotic
if you
wagering.
played that race and you bet, you didn't have to go to the racetrack if you gave it to a bookie, which was what my parents did. And the thing that started was my father worked in the railroad, a normal job, being a normal, everyday, normal, fine, upstanding citizen. My mother got caught up in the underworld, sneaky little shady stuff, and she started out in a little room on Wright Avenue in the house that her father built. Her sister Stella was living there. Right, we didn't live there at that time, and she had her room, and it was tiny, two tiny little bedrooms that the whole family of 12 lived in years before, which is
Well,
mind-boggling.
they slept in shifts.
Yeah, so then it was, the kitchen, living room, and there was this other room, which later on, years later, my mother lived there by herself, and the apartment wasn't big enough, and she made that room into a closet. So that room, my mother used to go in, and it was like an office. She had her little, back then it was the phone, the desk phone, those big gloomy phones, and there was no, of course, cell phones back then or anything like that. And she would get her paper and draw lines and take the action. Like for an example, it would be lines of 1, 2, 3, $10 straight 50-cent combo, 642 $1 straight 50-cent combo. So she would take all that. Now that amount of the dollar and the 50 was what would add up, and it did add up. When you have like 30, 40 people gambling and betting, and they all bet, let's just say up to like say $10, maybe even a day, which is
To give you an example, John the Greek, I know for a fact, was doing 10,000 a week.
Back then,
A week.
10,000 is not 10,000 now. I remember I had a $5,000 for a coat in the 70s that would have been 30,000, like in this decade or whatever. So what they're talking about, the amounts that we're talking about, sound small, but I remember when I graduated high school, and I don't want to say what year it was to give up my age because I'm ageless, but it was in the 70s.
You took after your father.
And my grandfather. But when you would for an example, I was offered a job, and I worked from 10 in the morning till 7 at night, 5 days a week, for $150 a week, right? And that was a real job, and I had to commute to the city, which cost money, which was time. So altogether, you're working, it was a 10-hour, daily amount of time that you worked for that amount of money. I had the option of taking a 2-hour-a-day bookie job, through my parents, for $150 a week. So instead of 12 hours a day of dedicating my time to work, it would have been 2 hours for the same amount of money.
I was a bagman. That's what they call a bagman. I used to make stops that had so many numbers you couldn't phone them in, and I would pick up a bag.
Yeah.
No,
And there was
no,
people,
no
they
money.
called them runners, right?
No, the
Weren't they
money,
runners?
the money went to somebody, whoever was taking. Kenny
Yeah,
Rossi.
you couldn't fool around with that money. You'd have a big problem.
Zoo, and Belleville, they also had a big number of business. I worked writing myself and getting paid. Now I was writing sports.
Okay,
horses.
it started out numbers, then it went numbers and horses.
No,
Later it came to sports as a bet.
Yeah, this is much later. This is '79. You got married. I was working for somebody in a house that girl I was living with at the time, Woodbridge. Never used our house.
You didn't do it
never.
where you lived.
We were switching to New York because we knew New York was safe.
Okay, now let's just say that real quick. In New Jersey, it was much more of a serious
severe
offense.
severe fine.
What was
absolutely.
it? I don't remember what it was. Was it a felony? I don't know
Well,
what it was.
depend on what they hit you with. Now, what they hit
When
with,
they tried to charge you in New Jersey, it was much more serious offense and much more severe
Well, look what they did to
penalty.
me.
In Staten Island, because it was New York, which was convenient. Staten Island's a lot more convenient in terms of parking and living and all that, because you went through the Jersey City to Bayonne, the Bayonne Bridge.
Guy that
it was a misdemeanor. So the people who were taking action in Jersey would get the same offense, a lot less severe of a penalty if they got caught in New York than in New Jersey.
I got caught
so they started going
I got
to New
caught
York.
in Jersey, and the reason I got caught was someone who was calling me with horses was a wise guy. He was already wired. I didn't know it.
And they got
I
my
was a
father on
clerk.
wiretapping.
I was a clerk. You can't hear the wiretap,
No, of course not.
but
no.
they on the manuscript. I read it. They put every word.
Yeah.
First time out of the box, no priors, clean record. I get 1 to 2. He said, as a matter of fact, it was Source's son-in-law.
No, really?
Yeah, he was prosecutor then. He said, this guy is with organized crime. I said, no, not all. Judge said, 1 to 2, 9 months custody. I said to the judge, can I have a week to? No, they're taking you now.
Oh my God, they took you right there.
Yeah,
I didn't even
yeah.
know. Yeah.
The only good thing that happened out of it was I broke up with the girl because she was a maniac. She was, I find them, boy, I'll tell you. She was, she was a whack
Okay, but
job.
you were
She was
living with her
involved.
when this happened?
The only way she got involved was she answered the phone when people called for the new number, and she gave them the number of a guy that was in a phone booth, public payphone, that would give the real number. That's all she did.
The phone number.
Yeah. So I stood up in court and said, Your Honor, this girl really had nothing to do with it. All she did was give out a number. He said, very noble of you. Now you could do her time.
Oh my
So,
God.
yeah. So I did end up staying for 9 months. Fortunately, it was.
But you went to jail much later than them. Because I remember when
the
they
whole year-
came, when they arrested, when they put my mother in jail. First of all, she was not upfront about anything she did. You never knew anything. She lied to everybody. You can never get a straight answer from her. She was the most evasive and
Liar.
naturally
Liar.
manipulative and like everything she did was like calculated, but yet she played dumb to everything, and she never admitted to anything. And then she expected my father to take the rap for her. Well, my father didn't even know what she was doing because she didn't even tell him the truth. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't like they both benefited and he should have taken the rap. But in her twisted brain, that's why I call it mala femina, because the ladies were all nuts in my family, all the women.
And all went to jail.
She
All of them.
believed that, I remember because I was in high school then, and when they were going to put her in jail, she said, he should take the rap. He should do my time for me. He didn't even know what she was doing. She didn't tell him, you know, and it wasn't like they were in it together and they worked together like Bonnie and Clyde, and they benefited, and then he should have taken the rap. She did it sneaky on her own. She hid the money. She hid the job. She hid the little affair she was having. But then when she got caught, he should take the rap. And he's not a man because he didn't take the rap for me. He couldn't take the rap. He had nothing to do with it. He didn't even know about it. She denied it to him. So how could he take a rap for something he wasn't even aware of? In other words, even if he was willing to do that, it wasn't going to happen. That they weren't going to let him do it because he was not involved. You'd have to at least be involved or at least know of it to be able to take the rap for somebody else. But she didn't like the idea that she had to get caught or, confess to things because my mother was great at avoiding the truth and avoiding confrontation and stuff like that. So she blamed everything on my father,
World War
whether he
I,
liked it or
World
not
War
or knew it or
II.
not.
World War
Yeah,
II.
right. It's like I say, they hold me responsible for the World Trade Center crash because they blame everything on me. Now, these days, that's how it was back then
Also
with my
smoking.
mother.
Smoking.
She blamed when my father came from Italy, something ridiculous like that had nothing to do with anything.
Smoking. I started her.
Oh, yeah.
I wish I might have, because I smoked 3-4 packs a day. Remember?
Yeah.
I was always sending.
And here's a little tidbit, fun facts to know and tell. I remember when I was a kid, you were able to go buy cigarettes as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
In a cigarette machine. What was it? 45 cents.
Oh,
I think it was 45 cents. What are they? $12 now, right?
$8,
And they used to
$9.
send me for Salem's, which were menthol, which was my father's, and L&M King, which was my
Which
mother's.
your mother's.
45 cents in the cigarette
Stella.
machine down at the corner, and you could do that as a kid. Of course, everything's so different now.
Stella had the Salem too, also,
Yeah, but
and she went to jail. And Marion, your other aunt, went.
oh
to
yeah,
jail.
let's get on that now.
They-
My mother, like I said, it was the 10 kids, right? The middle one of the middle ones, his name was Anthony, was her brother who, what did he do for a living originally? I don't remember.
United
Some legal
Parcel.
thing. Yeah, something like
UP,
that. But
UPS.
when he saw, and everybody was envious of, quick cash, quick cash. Of course, everybody ratted you out later and sold you down the river. But my mother started, and it was a little bullshit. She was like a clerk, I guess you would call it. She got
Yeah.
paid by the day and the hours, not
Right.
by the work, the amount
no-
of...
no piece of the action.
Yeah, no piece of the action. When they started getting a little too big for their britches, and they started saying, well, why don't we just hold some of this? Then they started making bigger money because they started holding on to a lot of the bets, which, like I said, you could only hold on to as much of a bet as you could pay off. So if it did hit, you had to pay because you couldn't go back to the bigger guy and say, oh, you have to pay it because he didn't even know you had it because you kept it. And that was kind of sneaky, but that's how they started their own business. Started with numbers, then it went to horses, And then years later, it went to sports. Now, I have a saying about gambling, and I say this because of my experience. I say, in a room full of degenerate gamblers, the surest bet you can make is nobody quits a winner. Because gamblers, if they do win, will gamble that all back,
Oh,
and they'll just keep
absolutely.
gambling till they have no money. So
Absolutely.
they have to not be a winner because they can't take a winning and keep it and like walk out the door with it, let's say, in a casino. And my father, who was an innocent, normal, fine, upstanding citizen working in the railroad, and my mother started with the little action, and then she said, well, let's keep it. It was always my mother's idea. That's why I say mala femina. And my father would like kind of just go along with it because you really had no choice because she did it
Oh.
anyway if you didn't like it. If you said no to something,
Do
she
what
just
you
did it
wanted.
anyway.
No, yeah.
And like she made me sign, they had an insurance policy or something. No, what was it? Was that when I hit 18, I was going to get money. And they said, oh, we're doing a handwriting contest. Here, let's see how you sign your name, my Aunt Stella. And they folded it so I couldn't see what I was signing and made me sign it to sign away the money I was going to get. I guess it was not insurance. What do they call
Annuity.
it? Life estate, life insurance, or something that I was going to get paid off when I hit 18. I was getting close to 18. So instead of saying, Brenda, we want the money, we paid it, we're going to keep it. They had to be tricky. No, we're doing a handwriting contest, and they folded the paper so I couldn't see what I signed. I signed it so they would cash it in and get the money. So my mother was sneaky about everything she did. So she would do stuff that my father didn't know about, but then get mad when my father wouldn't take the blame or the rap or whatever for whatever was she was in trouble for, which she was the one that was benefiting entirely. Nobody else was. Nobody else even knew about it, and she would just deny. She must have. It's like Eddie Murphy has on Raw. He says, if they catch you in bed with the woman and your wife catches you, you just say, wasn't me. He said, you just deny. My mother must have saw that because my mother denied. You could catch her blatantly, cold-handed, with
Didn't
some
make any difference.
red-handed, whatever they
She's
call it.
gonna
And she
deny it.
would deny it anyway. So you couldn't get nowhere with her. But anyway, I want my father to tell you like a little more because we're getting to the end of this. And my father is one of the few people that's still living because they're mostly dead. And that's why I say in my little article that I wrote, the people
Makes me feel old.
that are his age, that if they're not dead, they spent their final years in jail. And if they didn't wake up dead, I say, because he had a friend that used to use that expression, you wake up dead, which of course you can't do. And I find that funny because it's kind of contradictory. But it's just like my husband used to say, Brenda, shut up when you talk to me, which means don't talk. And there's a few Italian sayings like that are dumb. Like, every time I see you, you're never there. And if you leave, you got to stay. All things that make no sense. So I don't know, what else you want to say before we end about the whole episode of things and the...
Well, she never changed, but I could always tell when she was lying because she'd laugh and smile, and I knew, you're lying. There was no way she could get away with it with me.
Yeah,
Yeah, she'd get away with it because I wouldn't retaliate,
yeah.
because I didn't want to. I got into fights, almost got killed. I mean, everybody said, well, that's your fault. Why are you with her? And my answer to that is, I don't know.
For the longest time.
Well, she had me mesmerized. It had to be her
Enamored.
beauty.
He was enamored with her.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so was everybody else.
I met her on a boat ride. She was 15 years old. And I said to my friend, I'm going to marry this girl. And guess what? I did.
Oh. Wasn't it one of the Moscatos, right, that introduced you?
Well, he introduced me to her eventually, but I really didn't know when I met her on the bus ride. But that's the first time I saw her. We got 18 seconds, 16 seconds.
Yeah, so anyway...
But Brother Moscato, I made him laugh. I saw him on the floor and I said, I didn't know whether to slap you or kiss you. And he knew what I meant. He introduced me to kiss you, your mother.
Right.
But,
So shut up when you talk to me is just don't talk. Don't tell whatever happened.
Però sta faccia d'angelo te sempre venga tu sia più bella femmina te voglio bene e